Next speaker, please.
Hi, Shelley again. I'm glad we're on this slide because I had a question about this one. When, Chris, was this your slide?
Yeah, that was mine.
Okay, thank you. When you were going over this slide, you said that the brown part was an area that you wouldn't expect to find radiological commodities, and yet there are like 8 or 9 of them that are in the brown parts. And so I was just wondering what your, I mean, now that you know that there are some things in some of those brown parts,
would you please video me?
will you be expanding into more of the brown parts to see if there's more of the commodities in there?
No. So Chris, first of all, I think there's a misunderstanding here.
Yeah, so should I explain the background on the previous explanation?
Well, no, you should expect, she said not expecting to. We are expecting to find low-level rad objects. If you dug out all the remaining part, you can almost, could you allow me for a second to just sort of simplify it?
Please.
Okay. If you think, and allow me to, when you simplify something, you obviously go to some base terms and don't capture everything. But I believe he said,
I'm going from the ground up.
no problem. I believe he said just the opposite of that. When we go into a solid waste disposal area, and that's Bayside solid waste disposal area, okay? You can think of it in simplified terms as a bathtub, okay? Which has 3 dimensions to it. When he's digging out that bathtub and then sifting and surveying through the soil, you certainly are doing that to find things. Well, you're doing it for 2 things. You expect to find things, or you wouldn't be digging there in the first place, and we are finding things. And the second thing is, you're also doing confirming, right? So when you get to the edges of the bathtub, there's no more debris left, you've dug into the clean soil, you're taking samples, but you're also doing surveys and using instruments. That's the confirmatory part when you've reached the edge of the bathtub, so to speak. Am I being clear by saying that? But he's certainly, when he's finding low-level rad objects, of which he's found some more in this phase, that was fully expected in each of the solid waste disposal areas, because we know that the Navy dumped these radium-painted pieces of metal in those 3 areas of the base. So it's expected for him to find them. He'll find, I would guess, more of these in Westside than in Bayside, and I would expect that you would find more in Bayside than in North Point, because we know that because this is the second phase of that project, and in the first phase, that's basically what the statistics say for what we found. But I hope you didn't think that he was saying, or somehow that was communicated, that he didn't expect to find it in the brown area. He expects to find that in the brown area. In fact, that's one of the elements of why he's doing this project. Is that clear now? Did I?
That makes more sense.
Okay,
The note that I made while he was talking says, wouldn't expect in brown. So that's what I was confused.
Okay, so
and then
Chris,
when I made it, it says previously excavated and backfilled. Doesn't that mean that that was supposed to be clean?
Yeah, I think what's adding to the confusion is this is, you're looking top down, right?
Okay.
So this is only 4 feet deep.
Okay.
So if you dig down 4 feet, which is that brown material, the previous clean backfill material that we know is clean, yes, that came out. But on the bottom, 4 feet down, which, for instance, is right here, that may be a bottom sample, right? So that may be after they've taken out all the clean fill and put that somewhere else, which is building 570. And right in this area, as they're scanning the sidewalls of this foundation, because imagine that's almost like an island floating in the air now, right? You're excavated 5 feet down on the sidewalls of that building. As you're scanning along the side of here, if you pick up activity on the ground, that's where that location is. So it's tricky. This graphical representation isn't 3-dimensional. So really, if you spun that 3-dimensionally, these samples are on the bottom. Those locations are on the bottom. So that's why it's confusing.
So you have the 4 feet of the backfill, and these underneath the 4 feet?
Well, correct, right? Because we didn't finish in 2007. We did not finish the task, right? That's what we're coming back out now. So at that time, we did not. There was no radiological concerns in 2007. When we did this project, we were doing it strictly for lead contamination, chemical contamination. Once radiological contaminants became a concern, that's when we made the decision to fund this project and go back out and re-excavate out what was done in 2007, and then add radiological constituents, sorry to use big words, to add radiological testing to our project. So what's happened here is we've taken this brown stuff out, and what you're seeing is, as Keith explained, is the bathtub. So if on the bottom of the bathtub you find these items, it graphically looks as though it was in the ground.
Okay, so I understand that if it's a 4-foot bathtub, but I guess because I'm new and I'm sorry about this, what caused you to stop digging at 4 feet originally and call it a clean area? And how do you know that there isn't anything beneath that 4 feet depth?
Okay, good question. Let me try and answer this succinctly. There is a decision document in 2007. It's an action memorandum. That action memorandum was put in place before we started the non-time critical removal action, which again, to repeat at that time, was mainly for, or was only for chemical contamination. Okay, so when that decision document was signed by the regulatory agencies who bought into this and signed off on this whole process, again, the action memo, the selected remedy at that time, or selected action at that time, was to go to 4 feet, because exposure below 4 feet, you're then getting into groundwater, et cetera, et cetera. Your lead is not a concern 4 feet down. Radiological contamination is. So that's why we're going back here now, in conjunction with the regulators and the state of California, to come back and examine these areas for radiological contamination. So the historical thing, it's really 2007 is that's where that 4 feet came from.
Okay.
But I don't, just to clarify, I don't believe the Navy, I was not on the team at that time. I didn't join the team until much, much later. But I don't think the Navy ever said that the non-time critical action was complete, and I don't believe so. And I don't believe they ever then said that it was already, I think you said already cleaned. I don't think anyone's ever said that.
Well, it was excavated and backfilled, so unless it was backfilled with dirty soil, you would expect that it was backfilled with clean soil, right?
Right.
It was supposed to have been backfilled.
Right, but without the confirmatory sampling necessarily of the edges of the bathtub to say everything was done.
Okay.
When the Navy digs a hole, typically, you know, the backfill alone would not be enough for the regulators to say, oh, let's call it a day, it's clean. You have to have confirmatory, you're right, the backfill is clean, right, which is the innards of the bathtub, right? But you have to have a systematic confirmatory sampling, right, of the edges of the bathtub in order to declare the area clean. And that's why it wasn't declared clean. Did you want to expound on that just a little for her?
Yes, and it's important to note that at the time it was backfilled. We did not have a good data set for the radiological issues. That's why we're going back, to get a better data set. Re-excavating thing is something we don't typically do, but we knew that there was indication that there was contamination there, so we went back.
Now, what gave you the indication that there was contamination there after they backfilled it?
The samples, the historical samples from the bottom. We decided to go back and get that contamination under this project.
Will the Navy be digging beyond the 4 feet to see if there's any other contamination at a deeper level? Like, how do you know the 4 feet is the bottom of the bathtub?
Good question. Good question. Like Chris said, originally when the project was started, 4 feet was the maximum depth for chemical contamination. Okay. For radiological issues, we have more flexibility on the depth. We like to go after it so we get it all.
Have you gone below 4 feet since you've re-excavated?
In certain areas, yes. Where we see debris, we will go after it. And where our data tells us we need to go deeper.
How deep have you gone? Do you know?
In 1321?
Well, it's a work in progress. I don't
At Bayside or ever?
So far?
I guess in this general area, I'm just curious to know how deep have you had to dig in order to make sure that it's radiologically safe?
So, yeah, currently we've gone upwards of 6 feet. And that's not across the entire area, that's just in pop-up locations so that we can get an idea of where the former waste areas were. So we might pick selected areas in, say, one grid, I'm not sure if you can see, but we have pop-up down. 6 feet is about as far as we've looked thus far. I will tell you this, the goal of the project is to chase the radiological contamination to whatever depth we need to go. So we're going to go until we get a clean bottom. We're not stopping at any arbitrary 4 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot. We're going until we get a clean bottom of the sidewall.
Okay. That's kind of comforting. Thank you.